Also on the international stage, Turkish incursion into Syria. It's going to take me a minute to unpack this one because it's kind of a big story with a lot of actors. So no sooner than the show was over last night, or this morning rather. Yesterday I was talking about that I don't believe that this is a world war, and I still don't think it's a world war. But as soon as the show was over, Turkey got involved with an incursion. So up to this point, Turkey has not been they had not intervened directly into the Syrian conflict, but they had been supporting rebels, but they had been reluctant to directly engage. So President Erdogan said the operation was aimed against the Islamic State and Kurdish fighters. So no sooner than the show was over, the situation in Syria is so dynamic and it's changing so quickly that now we have a new state actor on the stage, right? Directly involved, not as a proxy, but Turkey is directly involved. And it complicates the situation a bit more with the Turkish-backed rebels. They took over a strategic town near the Turkish border that was previously controlled by the Islamic State. So they were able to do so by the assistance of Turkish armor and U.S. military air power. So not only was it Turkish, but it also had the imprint of the United States. The interesting thing, so there's a lot of interesting things going on here. It was reported that the troops stormed the city, but actual footage from the scene shows that they were able to take the city without hardly any pushback from ISIS. Really no significant fighting taking place. ISIS didn't leave anyone there to try to hold the city, no skeleton force, nothing. They took the city pretty much without incident, without major incident. And if you consider the implications of that, it seems as though there was at least a back channel communication at the minimum, right? Some commentators are saying that it's a direct coordination between Turkey and ISIS. I doubt it's so much a direct coordination as ISIS realized they're coming. We really can't do anything against Turkey. And so this is not a strategically important city beyond the fact that we want to expand our so-called caliphate. But realizing that they could not hold the territory, it sounds like once they realized Turkey was coming, they simply ceded the territory back to Turkey, which to me is a signal that they are moving very strategically and they're moving like rational actors, which we try to dismiss them as being irrational actors. But this was a very strategic move to just cede this territory without a major conflict, to make it seem as though they lost the territory in battle, which would undermine the legitimacy of their so-called caliphate even more. So the reason I bring up the fact that they're acting pragmatically is that I believe a pragmatic ISIS is an even more dangerous threat than an irrational ISIS. Because if they're willing to cede territory and retreat without making a glorious stand for their caliphate and for whatever they believe, then that means that they are going to be making rational decisions every step of the way, to the point where they're likely to be in this fight a lot longer than what the international community can actually tolerate. Now, the real question is, will they so easily cede critical cities? Right. Cities that are their base of operations, their capital, will they see? And that's the real test. Right. I believe that they will not see that territory without going down to the last man. But on these border cities, these border territories, we see that they've been ceding these territories without significant conflict. All right. But the other side of the story is there's another state actor involved in this small region. And I want to bring up some graphics here just for us to take a look at. And the graphic that I'm pulling up, actually, I want this graphic. This graphic shows you all of the different territories that are underneath the control of different factions inside of Syria. And as you can see, Syria has been, I mean, there's so many actors on the stage right now. You have the Syrian Defense Forces, which primarily being made up of the Kurdish YPG fighters, the Peshmerga. They are in the yellow territory to the north. You have the Free Syrian Army, who has different, they represent the area in green to the west, just south of the YPG territory in the north, and then also in the south. You have Turkey, who is now involved, who makes up the blue territory. You can't really see it on this graph, but it's on the border. And this is the recent territory that was just taken. The Islamic State, they're in black. This is all of the territory that has been taken by the Islamic State, the so-called Islamic State. And then, of course, you have other actors involved. You have the U.S., you have Saudi Arabia, you have the Gulf states, you have Iran, you have Russia, all of them being involved right now in this small region. And with all of these actors on the stage, it's hard not to, and of course, China now coming in a consultative role. It has all the makings of a legitimate world war because of how many powers are in this one region. However, again, the reason I don't buy into that just yet is because, one, we're not in a total war state where the entire nation has been mobilized for total war. That's one of the clear markings of a world war. We don't have great powers who are directly engaged. So we do have, if anything, it's a very murky and problematic proxy war at this point. I think it's fair to say that this is a proxy war at this point. And I'm sure there's going to be some scholars who absolutely disagree, but I guarantee you at this point, we can find some scholars who do agree. But I want you to take a look at this map one more time so that you can get an idea of just how broken that region is. And out of all the territories, the red portion in the southwest quadrant of your screen, that is under the control of the Assad regime. So in black, you have ISIS. In yellow, you have the Syrian Defense Force. In green, you have the Free Syrian Army. And those are just, ISIS, the Syrian Defense Forces, the Free Syrian Army. Those are just two of the many rebel factions fighting in ISIS, right? In Syria, so there are so many different competing interests in the region. It's really hard to get a really firm grip on who's fighting who, when, and why, and what's their desired outcome, and how does that desired outcome affect the stability of the region. I think it's safe to say that this is something that's going to, it changed since last night, and it's going to continue to change, and it does become more problematic the more state actors get involved. And each state actor is going in with their individual national interests in mind. But mind you, last week, one of the generals who were leading, I forgot what role he's playing there, but he stated a direct commentary towards Russia. He said that if Russia gets in the way, or if Russia, if there's some type of incident with Russia, we're going to defend ourselves against Russia in Syria. Okay, so that type of language coming from one of our generals is, obviously true. I don't want to say it's just problematic, because it's clearly true, and they want to send that signal. But being so close in this region, having so many actors in this region with so many competing interests, it's almost just a powder keg. It's just waiting on something of that magnitude to happen. And thankfully, so far, we have not had a conflict that involved one of the great powers or the superpowers. Everything has been pretty much a proxy war to this point. But Turkey getting involved obviously complicates the situation even more. Thankfully, they were able to take the territory today without any major fighting with ISIS. But we'll keep an eye on what's happening in that region. I think all of us need to keep an eye on what's happening in that region.